Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hi, I'm Benai Garcia.
Hi, I am Mo Collins.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik, Igrihe, and Ryan.
You're damn right, Chad Coleman. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of 2019 for the Cinik Radio Podcast. And I'm the missed field goal ending your team's playoff dreams, Cinik. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, well, it's all about the year that was 2018, as we give you our top picks for movies and TV shows, and we do a little bit of news and a preview for the upcoming year, because we are the Cinik Radio Podcast. Like, listen, subscribe, but more importantly, don't try this at home. Guys, it was a huge year at the box office. What were some of your favorite films for this year? My number 7. Ryan, I've got some questions for you. Number 1, if your son or daughter went missing, how far would you go to find them? And number 2, would you know where to begin to look? I mean, my number 7 pick is Searching. It tackles both of those questions. David Kim, played by John Cho, becomes desperate when his 16-year-old daughter disappears and finds out via her computer how little he knows about his daughter. It's a great film. IG, have you seen this one?
I have. It's really good. Basically, it's a more electronic version of Taken. It's really entertaining, and it just shows really how much information is out there and available on people's social media networks and things like that if you're able to go look. I was really intrigued by it, and it was really well acted and well shot. A lot of fun to watch.
It's really like a modern day take on a whodunit, and it's really interesting because it brings up a lot of questions for parents that might watch it. How much do we really know about our kids? Because his daughter in this movie was pretty much leading a complete secret life that he had no idea about. He was dealing with the loss of his wife, depressed. They both were, but they somewhere along the lines lost each other. And when his daughter went missing, he had no idea where to find her. So it was very cool, hip, technological savvy. I mean, if I went missing, my parents would never be able to find me because they can barely turn on a computer. It brought up a lot of questions on parenting in 2017.
My number 7 is, we just reviewed it, is Into the Spider-Verse, so I won't go into too much depth, but as I talked about in the review, I think it was the comic book brought to life, as much as you can do in any kind of a movie. Beautiful animation, unique animation, amazing voice cast, and to me it's up there with like The Dark Knight, Logan, Incredibles, as far as being like the best comic book movie, Black Panther, as far as being the best comic book movies ever. It's that good, and to get it from an animated movie is just phenomenal. So that would be my number 7 this year.
Well, any animated movie that'll make Kaz or Cinik go and watch and want to watch it again has got to be good, because Cinik does not watch animated movies. I
have to say they've gotten better, and I thank you guys for pushing me to watch it, because it was really enjoyable, and I was happy to see it win a Golden Globe last night. It definitely deserved it. If we're moving towards that trend, I would probably be more inclined to go see these movies if they're going this way with it, where it's not just going to be a glorified cartoon, but more of a, like you said, Ryan, a comic book come to life.
So my number 7 is the latest meme streaming all over the internet. Everybody is doing the Bird Box challenge. Bird Box on Netflix was a pretty entertaining movie. I really actually enjoyed it. The end of it was a little bit of a quick and easy letdown, but for the most part, it was just an enjoyable time. It was a way to take a movie and make it suspenseful without having to just go absolutely crazy on the effects, because we never actually saw the monster, whatever it was. It was just all about suspense and just a human that is having a hard time dealing with being a mother and being an individual and going through all these things, and then all of a sudden having to go through them all alone. It was really a touching human story that if you haven't seen, if you have Netflix or access to it, very easy to go watch, and it's a lot of fun. But please try and refrain from doing the Bird Box challenge and walking around with a blindfold on.
I know from everything I've heard and everything I've seen, it's definitely in my queue, IG. Because you're recommending it and because you're putting it on your top 7 movies, I'm definitely more inclined to go take a look at it than I was beforehand. Do you feel that it's a semi ripoff of The Quiet Place, or is it more of a different film?
It's a completely different film, and it's almost based upon like The Rapture. sort of that kind of thing. So it's different, but it's interesting, and it's very well acted by the people involved, including Sandra Bullock, who does an amazing job in this movie. And she's quite frankly done a lot of pretty good movies. So I'm kind of a mark for Sandra Bullock. I'll watch most things she's in, even the Miss Congeniality movies, but she does a good job. I like to watch her, and this is no exception. It is one of my top 7 movies of the year. I really enjoyed it.
My number 6 is Ready Player One. As the world moves towards virtual reality and the real world kind of falls to shit, this film from Steven Spielberg is set in 2045 and based off an amazing book of the same name. It's a fun ride where the fate of the virtual world is at stake. If you get a chance to see it, it's going to be a must in 4K with surround sound, as the CGI and pop culture references are off the chart. Came at a breakneck pace.
I saw it a few times, actually, myself, and I keep watching it, and it's been running on HBO lately. I keep watching it so that I can see how many new pop culture references I can pull out, because every time I watch it, I find something I hadn't seen before. And I know there's lists on the internet that'll list every single one, but I think for me, for my money, it's more fun to sit and try and see what I can find new in each time I watch it.
It really is one of those movies too, where you could watch it a bunch of times and keep seeing new things. A really, really great movie to watch. It's almost like visual sex for your eyes. It's the CGI is that good and that immersive, and it really makes you wonder if we're headed that way in a virtual world.
My number 6 is 3 Identical Strangers, which is a documentary about just an amazing that this is a true story. But basically, there's triplets, identical triplets, who are separated at birth, and they find each other kind of randomly, and just this insane story unfolds. So I think when this all went down, as it was a big deal when it happened, when they kind of found each other. I was too young, to know anything about it. So most of this was new to me, but it's just this, I mean, once the story unravels, it's just this maze of craziness that happened, and you find out this really nefarious stuff going on, the reasons why they were separated. It's just this really funny, tragic, all encompassing, just engrossing story. And one of the best documentaries I've seen in a really long time. And one of those things where as soon as you get out of the theater, you're going to immediately go on your phone and start looking up more to find out more of the details. It's just really that good of a story, and kind of one of those real life being stranger than fiction type of situations.
And it's another one that I haven't seen, but it's something that has been in my queue to see. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but it is interesting, and I do remember some things growing up hearing about some of these things. I'm interested, and the fact that there were triplets born that were completely separated and then were able to somehow come back together is just kind of an amazing story, so I'm really excited about that. My number 6, by the way, I'm a Star Wars mark, and I don't care what year it happens. Anytime a Star Wars movie comes out, even if it's a so-called bust, it's going to make my list. Number 6 is Solo for me, and I still loved it. I don't care what anybody says. It's a fun movie, and you know what? You can say it's a bomb, but it made over $400 million worldwide, so it made back its money and then some. Must have done something right. So the fact that people are like, oh, it bombed, well, it bombed on Star Wars level, but it didn't really bomb.
Yeah, and that kind of drives me crazy a little bit, because I can only imagine being someone like Babe Ruth, because that's what I'll compare Star Wars to. Someone that generally hits the ball out of the park every single time they come up at the bat, and you go 4 for 4, but it's a couple singles and a couple doubles, and people call it a bad game. That's not a bad game by any standards. I mean, they made back their money plus some, and I really think that it's a little bit of the hangover from how people felt about Last Jedi. It was a good movie. You can't compare this guy to Harrison Ford, because he's not Harrison Ford. And I'm glad that he didn't come in and do a full-on impression of Harrison Ford. I enjoyed the movie. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I had low expectations. I wonder how I reviewed it, thinking back, but I didn't love it. I thought it was...
You ate some crow. I'm going to let you know that.
No, I did. It was better than I expected. So I guess, in that way it was better. But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't as good as Rogue One or as good as The Last Jedi. There were some great spots. I think, I think it was a good movie. And obviously, the Star Wars fan in me wants to put anything that's Star Wars, on the list. But, I just can't put it. I just can't put it on the list. But it was enjoyable. And it was not as bad as I expected it to be.
My number 5, Deadpool 2 is a family film. Okay, maybe it's a film about a family. I loved the first Deadpool movie so much, I honestly didn't think that they could top it. And this one is bigger, louder, raunchier. I just can't wait to see where the franchise goes next as we head towards the X-Force movies. Let's hope the mouse doesn't rain on our rated R parade with its family values. But Deadpool 2 was my number 5 favorite movie of the year, and probably ranked much higher if I really sat there and thought about it, because the first Deadpool is just rewatchable on so many different levels, and I'll probably end up doing that with this movie as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Deadpool 2 is great. It had some amazing moments. I go back and forth about whether I think it's as good as or better or worse than the first one, but it doesn't matter. It's still a great movie. Kind of maybe narrowly missed my top 7. I think, if we were doing top 10, it would have made that list, but just narrowly missed for me, but still an awesome movie, hilarious. And that the skydiving scene is, on that short list of the greatest scenes in comic book movie period. It's up there with like the Peter, with Peter Parker and forget his Michael Keaton car scene, and up there with just the heist scene in The Dark Knight, and just up there with some of the best stuff we've ever seen in comic book movies.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. And now I'm going to talk a little bit out of turn because I haven't seen Once Upon a Deadpool, where they turned it back into a PG-13 rating. Maybe it's just as good. I haven't seen it, so I can't say anything. But when you take the rated R away from a rated R movie, from a character that is just blatantly rated R in general, I think that they're going the wrong direction. So I'm really hoping that they just let it live in its rated R territory, let it do what it's going to do, be raunchy, be evil, be doing what Deadpool does. Because Deadpool is right on. I love it. It's a great movie. What's your number 5, Ryan?
So my number 5 is Sorry to Bother You. So yeah, I don't know where to. It's like I had a hard time figuring out what to do with this movie. It's the most ambitious movie I've seen in a long time, and I think it definitely could have benefited from another edit or two of the script. It's a lot, but in the mix of it, there's just some amazing stuff in it. It's hilarious. It's really this really great take on the dangers of capitalism and the kind of the world we live in and where we're going to. I feel like it's a mix. It's somebody like Married, Get Out, and Idiocracy, and spit this out. And I think it goes batshit crazy in the third act, and you can either kind of run with it and go, say okay, or just kind of give up, go back and forth with that. But I just think it's such an ambitious movie, and there is such great stuff in it that while it's a mess, I can't help but really be impressed by what Boots Riley, the director, was able to do in his very first movie. Again, I think could have used another edit or so, but I'll whatever. I think it's an awesome first movie directed, and I'm gonna go with Sorry to Bother You.
Nothing makes me laugh harder than Danny Glover doing his white person voice. I loved this movie up until the third act. It's like the third act was when the pot kicked in, and everybody was just high as shit, and they went with what they wrote the next morning. I would definitely recommend this movie to anybody, with the caveat of you're going to get weirded out at the end of the movie, but just roll with it, because there was so much good stuff in the first 2 acts that it's really rewatchable.
All right, so my number 5 is John Krasinski's first directorial debut, A Quiet Place. For a movie that has very little sound in it, and like you could sit in a theater, and if somebody had a mouse fart, everybody'd be like, shut the hell up. This movie was just amazing. And you could sit in there and, like, as much as I love to go to a movie theater and just shovel popcorn into my mouth and everything, this was a movie where I just sat on the edge of my seat. I didn't want any snacks, and I had them, but I didn't want to eat them because I needed to really kind of focus on what was going on. And there's so many movies today where you can go in, sit back, and kind of haphazardly pay attention to what's going on and have a good time. This one, I was so engrossed and so willing to just sit and pay attention and not even want to blink. I felt like I was in A Clockwork Orange, and I needed the things to hold my eyelids open and someone to sit next to me and drop eye drops in to keep moisturized, because I didn't want to miss anything. It was just an intriguing movie, so well done. And, to say that something in sound editing is so amazing when most of it is completely silent is just an understatement, because that's true. There's so much silence in this movie, but it's just amazing silence.
I couldn't agree more. It was suspenseful. It was almost fun, but scary at the same time, because you just kind of sat there. You didn't want to make any noise while you were watching it. You didn't want to talk while you were watching it. And I think that's exactly what they were looking for in that movie. Hats off to Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, because they nailed that one. It was really, really good. It's not on my list, but like Ryan said, if we were going top 10, A Quiet Place would definitely be there. My number 4, you take The Matrix Add a little bit of John Wick, maybe a little bit of The Crow, and you have the movie Upgrade. This dark and dingy world is the perfect setting for a revenge-type movie. Grey Trace is offered a new lease on life after a brutal attack leaves him paralyzed and his wife dead. It's a really unknown cast, but a surprisingly good film. It just had this really dark, gritty, cringy feel to it, but it also had a really, really cool technological aspect. It was a really good film. I don't know if I would have went to the theater to see it, but I've seen it on video, and I definitely recommend it.
Now, I haven't seen this yet, but I'm interested. And one of the things I love about us and our podcast and doing this is, you know, especially when we do these recap lists like this, it gives me ideas for things that I want to watch that I haven't seen yet. Now I've got one from you, and you get things from me, and this is how I introduce myself to new shows, new movies, things that I wasn't even having on my radar, is really from you guys, because we're such a unique group of guys that watch some of the same stuff and some different stuff. I haven't seen it. Upgrade's on my list.
Number 4 is Satan's Slaves, which is one of the best straight horror movies I've seen in a really long time. It's an Indonesian film, so it's subtitles. It has some of the most inventive and creative scares. I actually jumped, a number of times watching it. And I'm very tough to scare with a horror movie, but it is really it's scary. It's got some great performances, a bunch, a lot of kids, kind of haunted house-ish type of movie, but just really good story. Kind of zigs when you think it should zag, and it's a little hard to find actually, but I'd had it recommended. But I'd definitely say if you have a chance to see it, check out Satan's Slaves.
Another Netflix one, because I spend a lot of time on Netflix, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and I'm going to qualify this with it's about 90% of this movie. There's the last story in this one, not a fan. It's a collection of short Western stories, and everyone up to the last one, I'm all in. If you like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and those kind of movies from the Coen brothers, because this is another Coen brothers thing, 90% of this movie is going to do well for you. I'm not going to tell you what happens in the last one, because you probably should watch it. But the rest of it, you're really going to enjoy yourself. There's a lot of fun happening in it. There's music happening in it. There's adventure happening in it. There's action. There's feelings. It's just a lot of fun. And it's Netflix, so all you need is your Netflix access or your best friend's Netflix access, and you're in. You can watch The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's a really good cast, a lot of good acting, and a lot of fun.
Oh, this movie is just quintessentially Coen brothers. I didn't love the first story because it's a bunch of short stories, and I didn't love the last, but everything in between is just gold. Short cameo by James Franco and Stephen Root, and it was really, really, really well done on a much larger scale, probably as good as Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in, different segments. I would definitely check it out. Like IG said, if you don't stay till the end, I don't blame you, because the last story was kind of long, drawn out, and a little boring. But every other story leading up to that was simply amazing.
You liked the first one. I don't want to hear any lies out of you. The first story you liked.
It was okay.
The Singing Cowboy? Come on, The Singing Cowboy is pretty fun. It
was okay. You know me, with anything musical or animated, I'm just kind of, I tune out. My number 3 is Black Panther. Black Panther is without a doubt the best origin movie for a superhero for Marvel or DC or anything of all time. From the casting to the special effects to the music, this movie left fans chanting Wakanda forever, taking in a staggering 1.3 billion. That's right, billion with a B. Worldwide, Chadwick Boseman and company are the new face of the Marvel Universe, and I, for one, couldn't be happier about it.
So, I'll just say I have that as number 3 as well. And I think it's, does a lot of stuff, a lot right. Kind of thematically, it's the most nuanced superhero movie that we've probably gotten. It deals with race in a way that's kind of, not heavy-handed, but meaningful, and in ways that you kind of wouldn't quite expect. It has some amazing performances and characters, including probably my 2 favorite Marvel villains in the same movie with Claw and Killmonger. The story is great. There's real reason behind what the villain does, and so there's stakes, and they're real stakes, and you feel it. And the only problem with it for me is the third act gets a little wonky, because the effects up to the third act were amazing, and then the third act, becomes a little bit of a CGI fest, which you just kind of have to accept with Marvel movies. But, that's the one flaw, and I'm willing to look past that because the rest of the movie is just done so well that, and it's one of those movies that really had a lot riding on it, and if it was a failure, it would have been a failure for Marvel, for minorities and minority run and led movies. So I think it had a huge job, and it passed with flying colors.
So my number 3, I'm staying on the Marvel Cinematic Universe train, but going in a little bit different direction. My number 3 is Avengers Infinity War. Black Panther's still on my list. It's still to come, but Infinity War is right here at number 3 for me. Really good movie, very well acted. And the reason it's number 3 instead of number 1 for me is the ending, because I'm just still heartbroken. And I know that pretty much everybody's going to come back. I understand that we haven't lost Spider-Man forever. The time stone exists, so things can happen. But I'm still, I walked out of the theater just gasping for air and clutching my chest. So as much as I love Avengers Infinity War, it cannot be my number 1 movie of the year. But it is an amazing movie, very well acted. Josh Brolin as Thanos really just knocked it out of the park. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, it was a feat to pull that off with the number of characters and the story, and to do it without it feeling like it was just kind of a mishmash of vignettes. So yeah, definitely it didn't make my top 7. It probably would have just been outside the top 10, but still I think it was an amazing feat for a movie to do what they did. And I think it had its flaws and my problems with it, but it was more related to the fact that they were cramming so much in, but it doesn't change the fact that it was really done really well crafted. And I think more important, it makes me want to see what happens in the next movie. I know that everyone's going to come back, but I want to see how it happens, and I'm excited for it. So, definitely solid.
Is this real life or is this just fantasy? My number 2 movie is Bohemian Rhapsody. Although I wasn't a huge fan of the coloring outside the line, as far as the timeline goes, everything else was as near perfect of a film as you were going to get. The music, the acting, the comedy was on point, and I'm really glad they went with Rami Malek, who was magnificent, over Sacha Baron Cohen. If you saw this in the theater, you really did yourself a favor. The music, the acoustics, it was like you're at a rock concert, and you really got a lot of details about a group that I have a feeling is going to make a comeback in a big way as the younger generation see this. Queen's music translates into today's society. It's really good, it's really catchy, and I suggest everybody see Bohemian Rhapsody. And I did see this as well, and I saw it in theaters, and I just love this movie. It didn't make my top 7, but maybe that's because I'm being a little biased about how they decided to treat some of the story, because I was pretty well versed in how things worked for Queen, and when Freddie Mercury discovered that he was HIV positive and everything, and they made it seem as if he knew when he did the Live Aid concert, and he didn't. But you know what? It worked for the story. And we have to remember that these aren't necessarily completely biographical. What they are is they're supposed to be entertainment with a little bit of truth thrown into it. And that being said, when I watched it again with that in mind, I just sat myself with a big smile on my face and enjoyed the whole thing. And whoever can't sit and tap their feet to We Will Rock You or the song itself, Bohemian Rhapsody, you're lying to yourself, because even if you don't like that style of music, that they are fun songs that'll just get your heart pumping and racing. Yeah, to say they took artistic liberties would be, an understatement. I didn't like that either. I thought it was really, really coloring outside the lines. When you go back and read what really happened, or if you were around for what really happened, you would just kind of shrug your shoulders at it. I thought they handled his sexual orientation in a way that would not scare away the masses, because not everybody's super open-minded. I think they called it sanitized as far as the reviews go. But I truly love this movie, and I really think that you walk out of this movie being a Queen fan.
My number 2 is Roma, which I'm glad I just watched it recently, because it was a phenomenal movie. It's basically like watching a master class in directing. It's Alfonso Cuarón. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I think he wrote, directed, did the cinematography, like practically everything for it. And I think it's kind of semi-autobiographical, which the story is fairly straightforward. It kind of follows this upper middle class family who's going through their own trouble, but it's doing it through the lens of a housekeeper or the help. Story wise, it's pretty basic. The cinematography is amazing. It's as good as anything I've ever seen. Every single shot, and this is a 2-hour movie, every shot is perfect. Like every shot is like the one shot you hope to see or get in any other movie. Like any one shot would be the best thing you'll see in any movie. And he just does it over and over and over to the point where you're seeing a car drive over a pile of shit and you're thinking, wow, that's a beautiful shot. I don't know how he got that. And I swear it's that good. And so you initially watch it and you're thinking, oh, well, okay, I get it. You know, it's a little self-indulgent and he's just kind of showing us this is how great of a director I am. But then the story hits you and out of nowhere, it's really powerful. And he's able to kind of make this both large, big story, but also really intimate. It's a masterclass in directing, and it should win the Oscar this year. I don't care any other movie. Nothing should beat this movie. It is that good, and again, I think he's got to be the best director we have right now.
Okay, so my number 2 is the thing that should beat Ryan's Oscar. And that's Bradley Cooper's directorial debut in A Star is Born. Now, I understand this is a remake from the, early 80s movie A Star is Born with Chris Christopherson and I think Barbra Streisand, right? And it's really well done. Bradley Cooper also starring with Lady Gaga, and it's just an amazing movie. And this is the big softie in me loves this movie. And it's just really a heartfelt, heart-wrenching at the end story that is just amazing to watch. The fact that Lady Gaga didn't win the Golden Globe last night is kind of a disappointment, but I think they were kind of doing like they did for Martin Scorsese when they finally gave him an Oscar. They were doing the same thing for Glenn Close last night, giving her the Golden Globe over Lady Gaga. I'm not sure she'll be able to recreate that at the Oscars. I think Lady Gaga will probably get Best Actress for this. And quite frankly, she'd deserve it. This was an amazingly well-acted movie with some of the best music in a movie in a long time. And it's a musical movie, so, I mean, they should have good music. But, we've seen plenty of musical movies where the music is kind of subpar. This one is a good one. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend A Star is Born.
I don't want to come off as salty here, but the fact that Bradley Cooper is probably like one of the top 10 most beautiful people in the world, he's a super talented actor, and now he can fucking sing too. I don't want anything nice to happen for this guy ever again. May he always stub his toes and step on Legos going forward, but you can't deny the talent. And Lady Gaga is a really good actress. She was in American Horror Story a couple seasons ago, and she showed that she has chops. It's a solid movie. I would suggest it to anybody. My number 1 is Avengers Infinity War. 10 years in the making, spanning 20 films. Every superhero is here. We're finally here, and so is Thanos. And the movie came off without a hitch. I loved it. I can go without the cliffhangers, but by far my favorite Marvel movie to date, as the battle to save half of the galaxy for me was just epic. Can't say enough good things about the cast, from Robert Downey Jr. all the way down to Tom Holland, and Josh Brolin as Thanos, much like he did with Cable, just absolutely nailed it. And like IG was saying when he rated it earlier, I can't wait to see how they kind of get out of this. I can't see, how they fix this and how they win the day so we can move on to phase 4. I can't wait to see Ms. Marvel, but number 1 for me definitely this year was Infinity War.
All right, so number 1 for me is Blind Spotting. Stars Daveed Diggs, who played Thomas Jefferson in Hamilton, kind of the original cast of Hamilton. And I think this is a movie that he's been working on with his best friend for a decade or something like that. Basically, the kind of premise is that his character's been paroled. He commits a crime. You don't kind of know what the crime is initially. He's got 3 days left on his parole, and he's just trying to keep himself out of trouble. And he's got this friend that's kind of a hothead. And so you're kind of watching him in these last few days trying not to get into trouble and get sent back to jail. And the movie, I think, is one of the best kind of movies to balance drama and comedy that maybe I've ever seen. It's got incredible charm. The 2 lead characters are clearly our best friends, and they have amazing chemistry. It's a really great story. It's really funny when it needs to be funny. When it needs to be dramatic and hit you over the head, it hits you over the head as well as anything I've seen. It does a great job of dealing with race relations and appropriation and posing and police brutality. I mean, these are all these really heavy subjects, but also, again, mixes in great comedy. I can't recommend it more. And when I saw that, I immediately came out of the theater thinking, this is the best movie I've seen in a really long time, and I highly recommend it. It didn't get much press, didn't make much money, but I would say easily my favorite movie of the year, maybe my favorite movie in a few years.
All right, so my number one movie, because these two got it wrong, Black Panther is the number one movie of the year. I love you, Ryan. I love you, Cinik, but you guys are demented, because the best Marvel movie to have ever been made thus far is Black Panther. Socially, visually, story, thematically, everything about this movie is as near perfect a movie as we've had in probably 20 years, probably since The Empire Strikes Back. I'm that big of a fan of this that I'll put it on board with my Star Wars fascination. I really enjoyed it, and maybe part of me is because of my multiracial family, and I have all girls as children. It also showed how strong women can be, which is something that a lot of movies haven't been doing, and especially Marvel movies. They're starting to lean that way and get more women being strong in their movies, especially with Captain Marvel on the horizon. But this one really showed women of color in very strong, advantageous positions, able to do things. And that really spoke to my family. It spoke to me. And this movie just hit all marks everywhere it needed to be. It was culturally appropriate. It was beautiful to watch. And it was just a lot of fun from the beginning to the end. Number one movie of the year, Black Panther.
Well, you're definitely right. It's definitely the best Marvel movie to date. And yeah, everything you said, I can't disagree with.
As an individual standalone movie, I have to agree with you. I just know that the Avengers Infinity War was a culmination of basically 20 movies that were all wove into one conclusion, and that's why I rated it higher. I loved Black Panther. It's definitely rewatchable. I can't wait for the sequel, and I'm hugely proud of Marvel's effort and the fans for coming out in masses to see that film. So over on the TV side, at least for me, there wasn't a lot of huge breakout shows this year, but we're almost drowned monthly in new TV content. Ryan, what were some of the shows that defined 2018 for you?
Okay, number 7, there was a lot of really good shows this year. Say number 7 is Sharp Objects, which I'm not sure if it was Showtime or 8. It was HBO. Okay, I just know I watched it on my phone and kept me up all night, a couple nights. So, I clearly really enjoyed it. Amy Adams gives an amazing performance. I'm forgetting, I didn't look up the names of the actresses that played her mother and her sister in it, but they give just amazing, just phenomenal performances. Her mother and her sister. Basically, she is a reporter who goes back to her hometown and is dealing with a kind of a mystery that's unfolding. There's a murder, and it's got just these crazy twists and turns. Amazing character work, really good kind of world building of this little town, and one of the, I don't want to say, I'll keep my mouth shut if you do watch it, but it just has some amazing stuff that happens in it, and again, it kept me up over the course of a couple nights, watching the entire show, lying on my back on a tour bus, so it can't be that bad. So Sharp Objects is 7 for me.
So number 7 for me, you know what? Having been a kid that grew up in the 70s and 80s, who doesn't love Henry Winkler as the Fonz? But I'll watch him in anything else he's into. And my number 7 show is HBO show Barry. Barry's about a hitman that wants to go and be an actor, and Henry Winkler is an acting coach, and Barry still has to go and do his hitman job and everything else because he's not making it as an actor. But it's kind of a dark comedy from HBO. It's a lot of fun. They're 30-minute episodes, so you can really burn through them pretty quickly. But if you haven't watched it, they just did season 2. So it's a blast to watch. I really, really enjoyed this show.
What happens when people come from a broken home? We've seen it many times, but what happens if you grew up in a haunted home? This Netflix show premiered right around Halloween, and I was shocked how solid and well-written it was. The Haunting of Hill House is a must-see. I'm not a huge fan of serialized horror, but this show kept my attention from beginning to end with a mostly young and up-and-coming cast, which is led by veteran actor Timothy Hutton. You don't want to miss this show because you're going to binge the hell out of this. So when you sit down to watch it, make sure you have a lot of time because you're busting all the way through it.
Yeah, and that's actually my number 6. So I'll just say, it's genuinely scary. Really, you're like really well written, and especially for serialized horror, that's really challenging to keep something interesting and engaging, and keep the mood and the atmosphere and the kind of scares coming without it getting boring or stale. The character work is really great. Definitely, be prepared to binge on it because it's really one of the smartest, especially for TV shows, horror shows out there.
So my number 6, another Netflix show, because Netflix always comes out with new stuff every month. It's got to be F is for Family. The pretty close to autobiographical story from Bill Burr, animated. It's hilarious. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's basically like watching All in the Family and That 70s Show and all those things all thrown together in an animated thing, because the dad is just an awful cuss of a dude that just calls his kids dumb names all the time and just treats them like dirt and treats his wife like dirt, and basically how life probably used to be. And it was okay then, and we all know it's not okay now, but it's okay to do it in animation, and that's what they're doing. It's hilarious, voiced by Bill Burr, Vince Vaughn, a slew of other people. I mean, there's just so many people acting in this. It's just a lot of fun. Even Laura Dern is acting in this as Frank's wife. It's a lot of fun. If you have not seen it, F is for Family. This was season 3 now this year. So it's a lot of fun. You can binge watch it all. It's all on Netflix.
It's a good watch. It's a fast watch, and it's a fun watch. And you forgot friend of the show, Mo Collins, is on there. She does a lot of different voices, an all-tool utility player for certain. She's hilarious in this as well. And season 3, you would think that the show would start to slow down, and it really hasn't. You feel the pain of the family as they kind of trudge through lower middle class life. The father had so many dreams, the mom had so many dreams, and then you start a family. And my grandfather once told me, Cinik, if you have kids, all you're going to have is kids. And F is for Family proves that in spades. Being a huge Office fan, it always bummed me out that John Krasinski came this close to being Captain America, but wasn't picked. But he found the next best thing in Amazon's Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. The show automatically wins Cinik points for me because it casts Wendell Pierce, who played Bunk from The Wire. But Ryan is an unlikely hero, a paper-pushing analyst who is cast out of his office and against a dangerous group of terrorists. I watched this show within the span of maybe a day. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I loved Jack Ryan. I know that they changed from the book and what the character previously is, but what's old is new again. And hats off to Amazon for picking this up. It's a good show. Yeah,
I've got to check it out because I was a fan of the novels, of the kind of Tom Clancy novels featuring Jack Ryan, and definitely something on my radar, but I just haven't had a chance to check it out. My number 5 is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So I didn't watch any of it, and then I binged on season 1, and then right around the time when season 2 came out, and it basically kind of takes place in the 50s. I want to say late 50s. Kind of a woman, her husband's kind of a fledgling comic, finds out he's cheating on her with his secretary. You find this out like the first couple of minutes, so nothing, no spoilers here. And basically, she decides she wants to become a comedian and embarks on a career in comedy. It is really a great, really smart show. It's really funny. Tony Shalhoub is amazing in it. I'm forgetting the lead, her name now, but
Rachel Bronson.
Yeah, Rachel Bronson or something like that. And then her manager, again, I'm forgetting her name, but is phenomenal. I mean,
Alex Bornstein.
Yeah, amazing performances. Again, it's really funny. The stories are great. It takes its time, which sometimes you're not used to because you're so used to shows kind of jumping the shark, that the fact that it's a bit of a slow burn with her career and when things happen. And again, what I like about it is there are a lot of tropes from TV that you expect to happen. Like somebody says, I'm going to meet you at 1:30 tomorrow. So you just expect, oh, well, this is TV, so something must happen to stop them from meeting. But no, they just meet because it's normal, because usually you meet people when you say you're going to. So, I like that it allows itself to be just a show and kind of unfold as life would until it decides to throw crazy things in there. also it's kind of a period piece, and they do an amazing job with the set design and costume design. So yeah, it's really a great show, and I was reluctant to watch it. I just didn't think it was something that would be interesting to me, but it really, I'm really glad I picked it up, and season 2 is great.
The cast of that show is just simply amazing. Rachel won a Golden Globe again for the second time in a row for that show. The second season has Zach Levy in it, which he's great. And and Alex Bornstein, who plays their manager, is amazing. But one of the standouts for me, and Kevin Pollak is really, really good. He's really funny, really witty. But one of the standouts for me is Luke Kirby, who plays legendary comedian Lenny Bruce from the late 50s, early 60s, who's like a trailblazer in comedy, kind of one of the first real rebels. And he plays the part really well because you can kind of identify with his suffering. If you look at it from a men's lens, this is definitely a chick show, but it's not. If you look at the name, you look at the fact that most of the lead characters are female, you can sit and watch this and get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's not just a chick flick. It's definitely for everybody.
So my next pick is season 6 of Orange is the New Black. And funny enough, at the end of season 5, I was almost ready to give up on this show. I think they basically had gone as far as they could with Piper Chapman's story. But what they did in season 6 is they really branched out into everybody else's stories quite a bit more, which I really enjoyed because, do it more soap opera style where we know a bunch of different things going on rather than worrying about one little thing that's going on. There was a lot of amazing performances by all of the new members and a bunch of the old members in this season. Again, another female-driven show, but a really well-acted, really well-put-on female-driven show. And you know what? I watched all the Weeds from Genji Kohan. I'll watch all of this. And I understand they're only going to do one more season of it, and then it's done. But you know what? It's been a good ride. And just when they started to get tired, they found a way to reinvigorate it. So they really made it very appropriate for now with some of the things they did in this season. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody. So if you haven't gone and watched season 6, you probably should take a look at season 6 of Orange is the New Black.
I'm really impressed with this because we are season 6 and maybe 1 was a bit of a subpar season, but she really only got 2 out of Weeds, and then the writing kind of fell apart and the show wasn't as good. The fact that this has been strong through 6 seasons and we're going into a 7, I just hope that they give it a worthy close for all the characters that we've grown to love. My number 5 is Barry. IG ranked it a lot lower, but Barry Berkman is a depressed, low-level hitman, seeing his career going nowhere till one day one of his jobs lands him in Los Angeles, California. And he finds the love of acting, this hilarious dark comedy with the always great Bill Hader in the lead as Barry, and a supporting cast, like IG said, with Henry Winkler. Who doesn't love Henry Winkler? And the god amongst men, Stephen Root. Dark, hilarious, sometimes violent, but well worth sitting down and binging the first season.
My 4th, now we're down to 4, is Bodyguard, which stars Richard Madden of Game of Thrones fame. And it probably has the most tense first 20 minutes of any show I've seen in a really long time. As I read one reviewer say, kind of Islamophobia aside, it is really a great show, very much kind of a binge-worthy show. Just great drama, some shocking twists, great acting. He's really good. I mean, I think he won a Golden Globe and he deserved it. I mean, just his performance as kind of an ex-soldier dealing with PTSD, but also, trying to make it and, dealing with the divorce. And it's just a really, really great show. Can't recommend it enough. And I'm glad that he didn't kind of get typecast into roles, just playing medieval, princes or whatever. But yeah, really, really, really great job.
Yeah, I watched the first few episodes of this show, and the only reason I haven't finished it is because I'm trying to save it so that I have something good to watch when I really need something good to watch. And you're absolutely right. The first 20 minutes of this series is just riveting. I couldn't peel my eyes away from it, and he was acted so well. And everything else I've seen in the first few episodes is right on par with that. Great job. It's good to see the King of the North be able to do something else now that he's been beheaded.
It's interesting because I'm going back through Sopranos, and you really don't see a lot of the actors or actresses from Sopranos popping up other places, and it leads me to wonder where Game of Thrones is really, really stupendously acted, but are any of these people going to kind of reclaim some of the fame that they did from this show? Will they get notable roles? So I really hope that they do, and I was happy to see Richard Madden show up in this show as the lead, no less. And I hear it's a solid show. It's on my list. My number 4, we all grew up watching Cops. Bad boys, what are you going to do? But imagine this. Imagine a 3-hour episode of Cops live, spanning 8 departments all over the country. Amazing, right? Well, we have that in a show called Live PD. It's my new obsession. This show has a great panel of experts leading the discussion and explaining what you're seeing. It's live every Friday and Saturday night on A&E. You really need to check it out. I mean, I can't stop watching Live PD. They put on 6 hours programming a week, and I basically watch just about all 6.
So my number 4, again, animation, again, Netflix. But I love Futurama. I still love The Simpsons, and they came out with Disenchantment. It's not quite as good as either one of those, but it was still really fun, and it was all original and all new. I really enjoyed it, so it's basically another Matt Groening show. You really got to kind of like that kind of thing, which obviously a lot of people do, considering Simpsons is nearly at 25 years now. He's doing the right kind of things. Disenchantment's basically more medieval than anything before, so he's done future, and now he's doing the past. It's a lot of fun to watch, and if you haven't checked it out, the first season's on Netflix. And here I am at Netflix again, but you know what? If you don't have Netflix, you know somebody who does. You have an option, go watch it.
So my number 3 is Big Mouth, which is animated Netflix. Premise is, basically just follows a bunch of kids in kind of prepubescent kids dealing with puberty, and it has possibly the best voice cast of any show I've ever seen. Nick Kroll, John Mulaney, Fred Armisen, Jordan Peele plays the ghost of Duke Ellington. Maya Rudolph gives one of the best performances of any show, period. It's just down the line, an amazing voice cast. It's hilarious. It's crude and crass, and some of the things I can't believe they get away with. It's really funny. And season 2, there's another show that I binged seasons 1 and 2, and season 2 is just as good as season 1, and I can't wait for it to come back on.
And we talked about this before, Ryan, because I love Big Mouth as well, and the hormone monsters are just absolutely hilarious. And we even talked about before, what's your favorite hormone monster, and mine has got to be the female's hormone monster. It's just absolutely batshit insane. And, having been through puberty and remembering how long ago it was, I can completely just kind of remember how crazy everything was. And it almost makes it feel more okay that it's more than likely that there was some monster driving every thought in my head. It explained a lot more than just that's the way things are. So, yeah, Big Mouth on Netflix, again, hilarious, and 2 seasons are available. Second season better than the first.
Much like its parent show, Breaking Bad, my number 3 just keeps getting better and better and better every season. Better Call Saul. Season 4 is getting deeper and darker and more complex as not only the pieces of the Breaking Bad underworld are moving into place, but the transformation, much like Darth Vader, of Jimmy McGill into Saul Goodman is in full flight. You can catch up on the first 3 seasons on Netflix, and if you're a Breaking Bad fan and you're not watching Better Call Saul, you're completely missing out. Bob Odenkirk is one of the best actors of our time, and you can slowly watch Saul Goodman come to life. It's hard, it's painstaking to watch, and it's just amazingly acted.
All right, so my number 2 is Atlanta. Season 2, I think it was called Robin season.
Biased.
Well, no, I didn't make it number 1. I could have made it number 1. But it is
trying to get another job.
Cashing those Childish Gambino checks.
One of the smartest shows on TV. It's one of the funniest shows on TV. What I love about it is that he and I guess his writing team are unafraid to kind of just do what they want. It never feels like this show is being written, for an audience because they have to get, hit certain notes or, get a certain amount of viewers. And I just love it for that. It's, it borders on absurd sometimes, but it's just so smart, so insightful. And, one of the things about the show is I'll give you, so as you alluded to, I got to spend time on his tour, and during the Emmys, me and a bunch of people were sitting watching the Emmys from a hotel while he was out in LA, at the Emmys. And so we were all kind of talking about the different episodes. How most shows will have like every season they have that one episode that you just refer back to as like, oh, that was the crazy episode. Well, this season has like 6 or 7 of those where they're just batshit crazy, but so good that you'd think you can only get away with one of those a season. And we were just talking about how there's just so many of those episodes because they just don't care. They just kind of go there. And I think the performances on this show are just amazing, from Brian Tyree Henry, Donald Glover, Lakeith Stanfield. I think this is one of, to me, one of the best shows of our time, really. And I might be a little biased, my connection now but I was saying, I think I said Atlanta last year when we did this, so we can go back and you'll see that I'm maybe not so biased. But yeah, no, it's definitely Atlanta's number 2 for me.
Number 2 for me has got to be Stranger Things Season 2. And maybe it's the nostalgia, maybe it's something else, but I really like these shows. And it's just kind of like Ready Player One with all of the throwbacks and everything that you see and all of the Easter eggs of things that are hidden around. Having grown up in that era, that just kind of brings me back to my childhood. And I really enjoy the show, and it's really well acted. And for children actors, they really knock it out of the park. And, there's just so many things going on with this, and the only disappointing thing is that it's taking so long to get back to season 3. And it's coming. It's on its way. It's just taking a while to get there because by this time last year, we were getting ready to get the next one out. That's okay. I'm willing to wait, just like I was willing to wait for Game of Thrones, and thank goodness that wait is almost up. But Stranger Things Season 2, again, here I go with Netflix. It's there for you to watch.
I don't think you have cable. I think you just have Netflix. It was a really good sophomore season for the show. I'm a little worried with the show that, when you cast preteen children, that they're going to kind of grow up and you're going to lose some of the charm of the show. But I really like Stranger Things, and I was completely bummed that they missed the October premiere date that they've kind of run with the last 2 seasons. I personally can't wait for season 3. I mean, they said they took this extra time to make it bigger and better, so let's hope that they did. And previously, speaking of Breaking Bad, my number 2 show is Ozark Season 2. I got lambasted last year from the fans of the show for leaving it off the best of list, and I can tell you excitedly that this Netflix show didn't suffer from a sophomore slump either. Marty and his family are entrenching themselves into the underworld of the Ozarks, but it all comes at a cost, and every scram brings them closer and closer to checkmate. Still starring Jason Bateman and Laura Linney. The cast is good. The tension is always there, and it always feels like Marty and his family have one foot in the bear trap, and any wrong move is going to be their undoing. I mean, the villains in the show are great, and even though it's kind of slightly listing into a different direction than it was the first 2 seasons, I still think when season 3 comes back, it's going to be a fantastic show.
Yeah, Ozark, that was one of the show that, if I was rounding out my top 10, it definitely would have made it. Just missed, and you could have made an argument for it even to make it there. I think it definitely was a great second season. I really enjoyed it. So number 1 for me is The Expanse. The Expanse is Game of Thrones in space, but things happen at a faster pace. And to me, it's the only drama on TV that rivals Game of Thrones. It's really, again, smart, great characters. I love their use of science. There's one kind of conceit, like kind of magical or supernatural-ish conceit, but otherwise the science in this show is great. They really go out of their way to make sure that everything, fits in kind of a real world setting. So space battles are realistic. Space travel is realistic. The effects are also really great with whatever the budget that Sci-Fi had, or now that Amazon is going to get season 4. But the budget, they made a lot with a little, and do some amazing effects work. And I think season 3 was phenomenal and really makes me excited for the upcoming season. Again, there was a little bit of a controversy where Sci-Fi basically canceled it, even though it has a big following and a very devoted fan base. And within a week, Jeff Bezos had picked it up, and so it'll be airing on Amazon. But if you haven't seen The Expanse yet, to me, the best sci-fi show easily since Battlestar Galactica, and in my humble opinion, I think it's better than Battlestar Galactica. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely watch it. awesome show.
So number one is a little bit of a strange choice for me this year, but it's got to be season 2 of Glow, the glamorous ladies of wrestling. It was just really well done, and I love this show. Alison Brie is amazing, even though somebody called her a bitch yesterday. It's just a lot of good things going on. Another female-driven show with some great acting by the males and females in it. I just like the show. It's, again, nostalgic for me, having grown up watching this kind of thing. And, of course, it's on Netflix again, so you must be right. I watch a lot of cable, but somehow I only come up with Netflix shows. Mostly it's because you guys stole all of the good shows, but that's okay.
It's on my top 10. Another show with a friend of our show that did an interview with us earlier in the year, Mariana Polka, is on it. I love the soundtrack to these shows, and I love the direction that it's headed. I mean, to end the season with them all on a bus towards Vegas is a great way to start and hype you up for the next season, because who knows what kind of hijinks the girls are going to get into out there. It was just as good as the first season. I mean, I can't wait for the season 3, and I know they're in the middle of production now. Yeah,
I love season 2. Season 2 is it's a great show. I love Mark Maron, even though he's just playing Mark Maron. It's still amazing. And we're all kind of, even though we probably don't watch it anymore, I think we're all pro wrestling marks, and we often will throw in pro wrestling jargon into our own kind of analysis of stuff. And so kind of I love it because it's kind of nostalgic, but a really good show, lots of heart, really funny, great performances, fun wrestling. So I'm excited for season 3, and then season 2 really was in a lot of ways better than season 1.
My number 1 show of the year, and chances are due to Disney's need to take their ball and go home with all their Marvel properties, and this will be the last season of it, was Daredevil 3. Oh my fucking God, Charlie Cox, for his portrayal as the Man Without Fear, the Daredevil. Some of the best character work and best acting that in the current Marvel Day programming, and Vincent D'Onofrio just killed it as the Kingpin. All 3 seasons can be seen on IG's favorite streaming service, Netflix, and I would definitely catch up. If you saw the movie and it kind of soured your taste for the character, go back and check out the Netflix show, because it was one of my favorite things they did. It's right up there with The Punisher as far as the most quality programming that Netflix has put out.
Daredevil is by far one of the best things, with the exception of The Punisher. The only thing I'm waiting to see if The Punisher has a sophomore slump, because season 1 was amazing, and I would put it just above all of the Daredevil seasons. But Daredevil has done it 3 times. Punisher's done it once so far. Daredevil is absolutely worth a watch.
What are some of the things you're looking forward to in 2019?
So one thing I'm looking forward to, I've decided, is the Joker. I just everything I see, despite probably my better judgment, it looks just great. Joaquin Phoenix looks amazing as the Joker. The clips, so much stuff has been leaked. I mean, he just looks like he is having the time of his life playing the character. I love the design. I love the makeup. The setting is, I'm going to have high expectations for this movie, and I just decided, I saw something today. I was like, you know what, that's on my list. I'm excited to see that.
I'll tell you, it takes balls to take that role. After what Heath Ledger did with it, I don't know how you take this to another level, because you're already at the top, but Joaquin Phoenix could definitely do it. I'm not in love with the screenshots I'm seeing coming out of it, but I do have high hopes for it.
Well, after what Heath Ledger did with it, and then what Jared Leto did the other direction to it, it takes a lot of balls to take this role. But you know what? Joaquin Phoenix has come out of whatever that crazy mentality he was trying to do his rap movie or something, and he's come out a better person. So I think there's a lot of potential in this. He's had some flashes of brilliance, and I think this might be right up his alley. First thing I'm looking forward to this year, though, is Marvel's first true foray into a female-driven superhero standalone movie in Captain Marvel. You know what? Captain Marvel looks amazing. All of the trailers I've seen so far, everything looks almost like a female Captain America, but that might just be the formula that Marvel uses, because whatever formula they use works. Their stories are really well done, and I can't wait to see how they do this. It's going to be good. Every other Marvel movie, even the bad ones, have been good. So I'm looking forward to Captain Marvel.
Well, the streaming service that Disney has started has kind of ruffled the feathers of the fans all over the place as far as what they've done to Netflix. But one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to in 2019 is the Star Wars-driven property, The Mandalorian. everything I hear coming out of this, the casting is weird and different and fun. With Jon Favreau heading the show, which they're spending Game of Thrones like money on each episode. I can't wait to see what they're doing with this, because they're bringing in big name talent, they're bringing in big name directors, and it's Star Wars, so it's always going to have a place in my heart.
Plus, it's Mandalorians. Who doesn't love Boba Fett? We're right there. It's going to be great. And we've been waiting for a live action Star Wars property for how long now? And we're finally going to get one. They've been promising it to us for 25 years. It's about time we get one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's gonna. I think we're all gonna be. It'll be interesting to see how quickly we watch and review that show when that comes out, which will probably be like day 2 or 3 after it's released. So the other thing I'm looking forward to is it's The Boys. So probably my favorite, not that I read many comics, but my favorite recent comic book is The Boys, which kind of deals with kind of superheroes run amok and a group of people that are kind of banding together to fight against these superheroes gone crazy. And it's really dark, really gritty, I guess for lack of a better word, take on superheroes and on a world with it. I really love the comics, and I'm interested to see how they make it work on TV. So I think that comes out at some point later in this year, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's a really cool property that can make for a great TV show if they're given the room to kind of do what they want with it and really stay close to the comics. Yeah, it's made by the same guys that did The Preacher. So yeah, so I'm hopeful that this is gonna be really, really good. I'm excited about it.
So the next thing I'm excited about this next year, you know what? We're getting a new Hellboy movie. Starring David Harbour from Stranger Things, which I thought he did a great job in that, along with Mila Jovovich, Daniel Day Kim, Ian McShane. So a great cast going on there. This looks like we're getting a little darker, grittier Hellboy, which it just looks amazing from the first trailer. I'm really excited about this coming out, and I'm really hoping they just knock it out of the park. The first 2 Hellboy movies were good. First one better than the second one. Second one lagged a little bit. But this really does look like they're going to take it in the right direction, and I can't wait for it.
And they got David Harbour in the lead, right? I mean, the sheriff from
Hellboy.
Unlike the Joker, spoiler images coming off the set as him, it's Hellboy, and the things I've seen have definitely got me excited. I wasn't a huge fan of the comics or the first set of movies. I wasn't too crazy about them, but I will definitely give it a shot going forward. The next thing I'm looking forward to, it's sort of like you're about to go on this great adventure, and you know where you're headed, but you don't know how you're going to get there. And HBO hasn't even as much tickled our ass with a feather yet. And I'm so ready for some Game of Thrones action. Game of Thrones season 8 is coming, and I can't wait for it. It's right up there with the Star Wars movie and the Marvel movies as far as things that I can't wait to review, I can't wait to talk about, and I can't wait to bring to the people that listen to the show.
All right, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you my number 1 is Game of Thrones and Episode 9. I just can't not have either of those on my list. I think we're all looking forward to them. I rewatched season 7 last week, and as crazy as some of it gets, it's just insane with spectacle, and I think it's gonna be sad when this is done, but really it is the best show on TV, maybe the best show ever, and I'm excited for the last season, and obviously episode 9, it's episode 9, and I loved both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and I can't wait for that to come out. So yeah, sorry I cheated a little bit, but I can't not have those on my list.
Yeah, well, if you can cheat, so can I, and I'm going to put the same 2 things on my list because I'm a Star Wars mark in episode 9. Now I got to wait till December. It's at the end of this year, but it's coming this year. And Game of Thrones are just dollar for dollar, time for time. I would rather not spend my time watching anything on television if new Game of Thrones episodes are on. It's just that good. It's always been that good. Through all of their seasons so far, there hasn't been a weak season. And that's not normal for any TV show. Game of Thrones has been so good that literally over the holidays, HBO spent days running each season. So I watched all of the seasons in the last few weeks again, and I'm just ready for the last season of Game of Thrones. I'm not ready for it to be over, but I'm ready to see where we go. And episode 9, you know what? We got J.J. Abrams back, and I loved The Force Awakens. The Last Jedi I liked. I loved The Force Awakens, and I think he's going to take us back in the direction I'd like to go.
I'll do you one better, because I think HBO has put out some of the best programming that's ever been on TV, from Deadwood to The Wire to Sopranos and as I go back and I rewatch these masterpieces, there's always episodes where I absolutely skip. I can't find a Game of Thrones episode that I don't like. Hell with a weak season. I can't find a weak episode where I'm like, that's not important to the story, or I'm not going to miss anything by not watching that. Game of Thrones, definitely one of the best things that's ever been done. Probably ranked 2 for me all time, right under Breaking Bad. And the fact that we're going to get a conclusion and it's going to be amazing. I mean, they've been talking about how it took, I think it was like 15 days to shoot Battle of the Bastards, which was absolutely epic. And it took over a month to shoot the final battle for Game of Thrones. It's going to be fucking good. For me, the number one thing I'm looking for in the up year, I'm with these guys as far as episode 9. I'll always be the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, but I've been waiting for the end of the Marvel saga as far as Thanos. So it's Marvel Infinity War Endgame. I can't wait to see it. I'm excited about it. I mean, all my favorite heroes are laying in a pile of dust somewhere in a shop vac, and I want to know how they get out, and I want to know how Thanos is defeated, and something tells me Captain Marvel will have a lot to do with it. All right, Ryan, what was your biggest surprise?
Solo was almost there, but I'd say if there was a movie I had lower expectations, it was Aquaman, surprisingly. And, while, look, Aquaman's not a perfect movie by any chance, I was pleasantly surprised that they did, had enough with the kind of, it was enough, ambition with the effects, and it was enough of a story there. And, he's charming enough. I think some of the jokes are kind of silly. I think you really see a difference between DC and Marvel just in the comedy. And I'm hoping that with James Gunn on board for Suicide Squad, that they maybe start to get that right. Because, I rewatched Justice League, and it's just brutal to watch some of the jokes. I think they did get some of the comedy right in Aquaman. And, I really had, if I had low expectations for Solo, I had no expectations for this. And I was pleasantly surprised. So I'd say it just ekes out Solo as far as my biggest surprise. Again, not the best movie in the world, not going to make my top 20 of the year, but a solid movie, and maybe DC can start to get on the right track. I don't know.
My biggest surprise, and not the fact that it was good, but that it was amazing. Rockstar's follow-up on Grand Theft Auto is Red Dead Redemption 2, and it took the world by storm, selling an amazing 17 million copies its first week out. And I have to tell you, if you're a video game fan, this is the must buy. If you don't own it and it's not on one of your consoles right now, Red Dead Redemption 2 is not only a good game as far as gameplay, but the story rivals a movie in the sense of just the content and the arc and the dialogue and the choices. And you got to check out Red Dead Redemption 2.
So my biggest surprise this year was BlacKkKlansman. And just because it was such a good movie, and it just didn't seem like it was Spike Lee's wheelhouse in how this movie was done. But you know what? It ended up just an amazing movie. It was really well done, and based on a true story that is absolutely hilarious, that you can get a black man to join the Ku Klux Klan. But it happened, and I love the movie. It was a lot of fun to watch. It's hilarious to watch, and again, to know that it actually happened sells it even further for me. So Spike Lee kind of taking something and kind of getting out of his comfort zone and doing something different. That was my biggest surprise of the year.
Yeah, BlacKkKlansman, probably another movie that would have rounded out my top 10. I thought it was a really good job, and it's interesting. I think this is a really big year for black filmmakers, whether it be on TV or in movies. There's a lot. And I think it's an important thing. I think it's important that we're seeing more diversity, more women, more people of color, and we are starting to see a lot of that. And I think it was a big year, but kind of like the OG, black director, at least modern black director, kind of also was able to really knock one out the park. And yeah, it was definitely a great movie. And I kind of had high expectations, and especially when I saw the previews and having heard about the story. But yeah, he definitely didn't disappoint.
Ryan, what was your biggest disappointment?
Had a few that I was kind of going to pick from, but I'd have to say Luke Cage season 2. I think season 1 I liked more than most. I think season 1 starts off great. Cottonmouth is an amazing villain, and I think once he's out of the picture, I think things went downhill for a lot of people. I liked the kind of the next big bad, and so I was kind of fine with season 1, realizing that you had a situation where Luke Cage as a character just is not the most interesting character in the world, and so in order to make the show interesting, you really had to build around him. But I was hopeful that they would, and unfortunately I think season 2 just really, it just doesn't pick up. And I think he, and I don't know if it's him as an actor or if it's the writing or the character, but he's just not interesting, and they couldn't build a world around him that was interesting enough to make me really want to watch it. And I think they kind of had lightning in the bottle with Mahershala Ali as Cottonmouth. I think in hindsight it probably wasn't the best idea in the world to off him so quickly, because I think he really made a lot of season 1 work. And again, I had high expectations for season 2, but it just didn't work. And so that definitely for me is my biggest disappointment.
My biggest disappointment in 2018's got to be Elon Musk. A guy that was on top of the world. Literally everybody looked up to him, and anything he said became gold. And when Elon Musk said we can go to Mars, everybody believed we're going to Mars. Elon Musk started selling Teslas. Everybody wanted one. I still want a Tesla. Then he goes on the Joe Rogan podcast and smokes weed. Then he tries to rescue people with some crazy submarine. And then he starts bad-mouthing people for saying that he's a Looney Tune. And he's just had like a meteoric dive in what's going on here. He's still doing great things. So, I mean, there's still some potential for the man. But, I mean, he's really trying to stretch himself so thin and do so many different things and try and be so relatable. Like, do you need to smoke weed on a podcast to become relatable? I don't think so, buddy. We're not looking to relate to Steve Jobs or Tim Cook or Bill Gates. You're supposed to be kind of providing the next thing that we're going to use. Everybody uses smartphones that started with Steve Jobs. Everybody uses computers that really kind of came big from Bill Gates. And we're looking forward to trying getting some renewable things that's coming from Elon Musk. And he's just kind of really putting himself in a bad position right now. And I'm very disappointed about it, because he's somebody that I held in pretty high regard until this year when he made some just blasphemous mistakes.
Well, and for once, I'm going to have to disagree with you, IG. And not because you're wrong, but because I see it in a different way. Do you think that was the first time Elon Musk smoked pot? That he's not an out-of-the-box thinker, and that he has all these crazy ideas? Did you look at his face while he was doing it? Because it kind of looked like the first time he ever smoked pot. He looked pretty upset about doing it. My problem was what he did was it was irresponsible for the head of one of the biggest companies in the world to do that. But should it have been? I mean, really, should it have been for him to show who he actually is behind all these innovative things? I mean, should you be condemned? Does that make him reckless because he said it out loud? I don't know. I really don't see what he did was wrong. I think it was slightly irresponsible, but at the same time, I'm sure that guy's high every single day, because these great thinkers, most of them come from a place that's far off center, and that's what makes them great thinkers. But my biggest disappointment, much like IG, isn't a person, but people. I was in geek heaven when we were told we were going to get a solo Star Wars film just about every year. And now this is why we can't have nice things, guys. Because of the backlash of The Last Jedi, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I still found things to like about it. It was taken out on Solo, and it was treated like the unwanted stepchild of the Disney films, and now they've pumped the brakes on content after Episode 9. Thanks, guys. Thanks a whole lot.
So there's still some news stories we got to talk about from 2018, and hopefully we can learn going into 2019 to do some better things. One of the big things we got to realize is that, Disney's taking their ball and going home, and they've basically put an end to all of the Marvel Universe shows on Netflix. We're getting one more season of Jessica Jones, one more season of Punisher, and then it's all leaving. Now, I don't think it's leaving for good. I think they're going to recreate content over on Marvel's streaming service, but it's just not right to take something away from this, because there's money to be made on these things, but it's just one of those things where you're taking from Peter to pay Paul, and it's just not right to do these things, because you know what? Netflix invested to build these properties up, and it's a huge part of at least Marvel's TV universe portion to do these things. And Disney had very little risk because it was all Netflix's money. And now they're putting it into it, because I think Netflix would be more than willing to go ahead on some more seasons of at least some of these. Hopefully not Iron Fist, but maybe the rest of them would be just fine to keep going.
Well, what killed me about this decision is that Disney has no interest in the violence and the profanity and, the adult nature of these shows. And I don't think they're actually going to be coming back, because there is a clause in the contract where these particular actors in these roles are basically non-compete for almost 2 years. So these are all great actors. They're all going to move on and do other things. Let's hope they do anyway. So I don't quite understand why Disney couldn't leave well enough alone. You don't want to develop any more properties over there? I fully understand that. But it suits no purpose to rip this content away from your fans that they love it. I mean, other than the seasons being 13 episodes too long, it should have been about 10. This didn't make any sense to me. This is we've got to control every aspect of it, and it's lose-lose for everybody involved.
I think I would be completely okay if Disney didn't have an interest in that kind of tone for their shows, and I think that's what really made those shows interesting and different from anything else Marvel related that we were getting. That we were really getting dark shows that really dealt with adult tone, heavy. They could go with the violence, and we're just gonna get the sanitized kind of version on Disney. And if Disney goes ahead and reboots these shows and keeps that tone, great. But I just doubt that that's gonna happen. And same thing kind of dealing with Deadpool. Like, what do they do with Deadpool, and what do they do with some of these characters where they need the R. And I'm kind of glad. I don't think Once Upon a Deadpool did all that great, and I was hoping that, because Deadpool needs to be R. He needs that room. Otherwise, it's just not, to me, it's not that interesting of a character. Or at least you always know that he's handcuffed, and I think that takes away from the character, I should say. So yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's sad. Kind of sucks. It doesn't really make much sense unless Disney's gonna somehow find a way to kind of incorporate the darker tone TV shows in their lineup.
And so the House of Mouse continued to take headshots around the universe and everything, and decided to fire James Gunn from doing the next Guardians of the Galaxy's movie. And this, despite continuing to allow Robert Downey Jr., whose previous life was by far worse than anything James Gunn had ever done, to portray Iron Man. They are very picky and choosy about what they're going to let people do, because James Gunn is never on screen. So his name is just literally in the credits for most people. If you put him in a lineup, 9 out of 10 people, even Marvel fans, couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But they fired him out of some Twitter comments from years previously. But like I said, Robert Downey Jr.'s previous life was full of drugs and prostitution and other things, and he's still allowed to go and do Iron Man. I wonder if it's a financial decision or just Robert Downey Jr. has repented enough.
Yeah, you can't get rid of Robert Downey in that role, where I guess theoretically you can get rid of James Gunn. I think you don't have Guardians the way that it was without him, and I think it's a huge pickup for DC, with having him work on Suicide Squad. I think it's a situation where context, is always really important. And intent matters, and time, is an issue. And I think, one of the challenges when it comes to just this whole world of kind of the outrage culture is, yes, there are times where people say and do things that they do need to deal with the consequences for, but there also, there got to be limitations. And I think with James Gunn, you reach that point where look, what he said was stupid. It didn't, it was dumb, but it was very clearly an attempt at humor, a bad attempt at humor. It wasn't funny, but it was a long time ago, and I think he's apologized for it. He's not something he does now, and I just, it doesn't make sense to fire somebody for some stupid comments he made 10 years ago on Twitter, or 8 years ago on Twitter. Doesn't make sense when you're also willing to kind of give second chances to people who have been in and out of jail and dealt with drug abuse and spouse abuse and just all kinds of things. Doesn't quite make sense to me that's the line you're going to draw. I think it's going too far, and then it's letting the trolls win. And so we need to find the right balance, where we don't just fire people over some stupid stuff. We do the same thing with Kevin Hart, and we got to be careful about what lines we're going to draw for people. people and where we fire people for stupid stuff.
Well, whether it be music or comedy, the line is always shifting to what is now acceptable and what is unacceptable. The problem is when you have a company as big as Disney, this decision won't hurt their bottom line enough for them to go, hey, we screwed up. Next time, maybe we should give this guy a little bit more slack, or maybe we should give people more leeway. They're just going to move on. And I mean, they're living on a pile of money anyway, so it really won't matter James Gunn or not James Gunn. It's us and James Gunn are the ones that suffer, because Guardians will probably take a step back as far as quality, and he'll go over to DC and he'll make a great film, but he's not going to turn the tide of the DC Marvel struggle either. But it just shows you how much power these companies have, that, you know, ripping the stuff off of Netflix or firing James Gunn, although it hurts the product, it's not going to bring them to their knees.
My next biggest thing to talk about from 2018, which really ties into everything we've talked about from our news stories so far, was the passing of Stan Lee. While he hasn't been a content creator in quite some time, he's quite literally the father of many of our beloved franchises. And you know, a lot of people kind of looked at this and were kind of saying, you know, so what? Who cares? Now we don't get cameos anymore. Not a big deal. But it's just really time to sit and think about, you know, this guy changed probably a lot of things in the world. He did things that were interesting and new. I mean, kind of like when Star Trek had their first interracial kiss on television. You know what? Marvel was doing things in their comic books that were unheard of when Stan Lee was editor-in-chief and still in his creative mode. Losing Stan Lee this year was a big loss for geekdom and movie fans, and especially superhero fans.
These are modern day mythology, right? Like this is what Greek mythology was for, you know, like the Greeks or ancient Greece. And these are kind of our modern day myths, our modern day heroes. And he's the kind of father of a lot of that. So I think look, he was at an advanced age, lived a great life. And so his passing itself isn't tragic. I think it still is kind of monumental, whether we like it or not, in our world and just in pop culture. He's had an indelible impact. And, I know there are questions as to like the amount that he, how much he worked on certain characters or whatever, but there's no denying, his hand in all of this. And, so I think he's kind of a giant among men, in a lot of ways. And so it definitely is something that it's felt, across the kind of pop culture landscape.
And the last thing I'd like to talk about this year, we spent a lot of time here on the Cinik Radio podcast talking about The Walking Dead. And one of the things that happened was Andy Lincoln decided to leave The Walking Dead, but he's not leaving The Walking Dead universe. He's leaving The Walking Dead series. Because apparently AMC decides they want to take him out of there and put him in some spin-off movies with just him. Well, I'm guessing Jadis too, because she went with him. Why, AMC? Are we taking something that was working and we're going to try and spin it off into something else? Where is the logic in this? Is it dollar signs? Is it the ability to spin into new money? Is it maybe trying to put it into a theater, which I heard might be an option if they think it's good enough that they're not going to put it on the TV. They're not going to put it on AMC. They're going to put it out in a movie theater and make us all spend $10 a pop to go see it there, which we'll do because we're all lunatics and we'll go watch anything that says The Walking Dead on it. I'm a little torn about it, especially because if they were going to have Andy Lincoln leave, if he'd have left the hero's way where Chandler Riggs and other people that have left the show have done, I'm on board. That would have been great. But to have him leave so that you can keep him alive as some kind of a cliffhanger out there so you can spin off some movies and some TV shows really just kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because you know what? Walker Stalker conventions are huge, man. There's millions of dollars being traded hands every time one of those things goes on. And are we really that desperate for cash that we're trying to get every nickel we can out of Andy Lincoln?
Yeah, I was in complete disagreement with this move. I don't like the idea going forward. I think that they should have, it would have been one of the best heroic deaths all time, and it would for one of the best characters ever written for TV. Rick Grimes was flawed. He made a lot of stupid decisions, but at the end of the day, he was a lovable character that, over the last 8.5 years, watched everything he did. I cried when he cried, and I enjoyed Andy's performance. I'm not quite sure what this is all about, these movies. I'm going to be honest when I say that I have no interest in them, and it's not just being salty that he left the show. It's, what are they really going to do? I mean, are they going to try to make it look like America? Are they just going to not even put up errors and just say, oh, but somehow he ended up in England and now we've got Walking Dead London? I'm just not interested. I wish they would have said goodbye to the character the right way, and Andy would be free to go do Love Actually 2 or whatever else he's doing, because I really don't think that he's ever going to achieve the success that he has playing Rick Grimes or the notoriety that The Walking Dead has brought him.
And that's it for our look back at 2018 on the Cinik Radio podcast, and a little bit of a look forward to 2019. I'm Igrihe here with Cinik and Ryan. Happy New Year, and I hope you all had a happy holidays. We're going to be back all year with a lot of new content this year. You're going to want to stick around. We've got movie reviews. We've got The Walking Dead coming back and Game of Thrones. We want to thank you again for all the love and support we get from everyone every time you listen to the Cinik Radio podcast. Continue to share it with all your friends and family. You can find the Cinik Radio podcast at CINIKRADIO.com. You can find us on Twitter at Cinik Radio. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Cinik Radio. You can find us on Instagram at Cinik Radio. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cinik Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, cups, mugs, and all kinds of different things. Support the show. We really appreciate it. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.